There's actually lots of different ways to solve them. Three in particular that just like are on the top of my head, but we're going to start out by solving them with graphing. So systems of equations, what that even means, it's a set of two or more equations. And the solution, so normally when we find a solution to an equation, it's just like one solution for one equation. But this case, we're finding a solution that meets both of the equations. And the solution actually looks like a set of coordinates, so it'd be x, y. It is a set of coordinates. It's where the two lines intersect. So what we're going to do is we're going to graph both equations, and then the point where the two lines intersect is our solution. And then right here we have equations. So we're going to get two equations at a time. If you're doing this on paper, here's the two equations that you need to write down. So this is number 1, and then over here is number 2. So we're going to start with number 1. And we have two equations in slope-intercept form. So these are going to be really easy to graph. This is your y-intercept, and then your slope is the coefficient in front of the x. So in this case, our slope is 1. When we're graphing this, we have to make sure that we're super accurate. One way to make sure your lines are accurate is to graph like multiple points. So you're going to use slope multiple times. So just note, use the slope, oh, my pen's not working great, multiple times to make the line straight. And then also use a straight edge. So whether that be a ruler, which I know a lot of us don't carry rulers with us, but you can use your ID. I like to use a stack of Post-it notes, as you've seen me do. So just using a straight edge to make sure your lines are super accurate will make it easier to find the solution. Okay, so I'm going to graph these two lines, starting with the first one, y-intercept of -2. Actually, I'm going to use it. Y-intercept of -2, and then a slope of 1. So y-intercept is down here on the y-axis at -2. And then from here, the slope is 1, so that's up 1 over 1. And I found the smaller you actually make your dots, the more accurate your line will be too. So I'm going up 1 over 1, but the slope of 1 over 1, as much as it's up 1 over 1, it could also be -1 over -1, so we can also go down 1 to the left 1. And there's our line. Then for the next one, the y-intercept is at 10, so I'm going to count up 10 on my y-axis. There. And then the slope is -1, so that's -1 over 1, so down 1 to the right 1. And again, making my dots just small. And then graphing the line with your straight edge. Right there. Okay, so our solution is where these two lines intersect. And if you graphed your lines accurately, it will intersect right here. And those coordinates are 6 would be the x-coordinate, and the y-coordinate is 1, 2, 3, 4. So your solution here is 6, 4. Yes?
Isn't this the one where like you put a bracket and then you stack them, subtracted, added?
I don't know. What do you mean? Is it that step equation thing?
No, you put a bracket and then you put the equations. You like cancel one of them out.
He's making his own form of algebra.
Piecewise? Where we had like a bunch of equations? I don't know. Okay, next. Same exact thing, and this is more like Algebra 2 level. We don't have the equations both in slope-intercept form. We have to rearrange this equation to be in slope-intercept form so that way we can graph it. This one we can just graph as is. We see our y-intercept, we see our slope, but this one we have to rearrange. And the ones, there is a homework assignment on Schoology tonight, and the ones on your homework, most of them you do have to rearrange. So for this, I need to add 4x to both sides. And then divide both sides by 2. And I get y equals 2x plus 4. And now I can graph this equation easily now. So here, y-intercept is at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our slope is 2, so I'm going to go up 2 over 1. And then positive 2 over 1 is the same as negative 2 over negative 1, so I can also go down 2 to the left 1. Again, I'm making my point small on purpose, so my line's just going to be super accurate.
Can I answer a short real quick?
No! Can you wait like 5 minutes because this lesson's pretty short? So just wait. Or no, you can't wait.
I'll be fine.
If it's an emergency, you can go. Then for the next one, we don't have to rearrange it all at all. It's in slope-intercept, so y-intercept would be at -3. And then our slope is -5, so that's down 5 over 1. Negative 5 over 1 is the same as positive 5 over -1, so I can also go up 5 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and the intersection's right here at -1, 2. And so that is our solution, our answer there. Okay, once I see that most people are done with this, I'm going to move over to the next side. Okay, you ready? Okay, next. Solving systems of inequalities now. So when we graphed inequalities in the last chapter, we would graph like a line, and then whether it was like y is less than like 2x plus 4, we would shade below the line for y is less than. That's what we're doing here. The solutions for inequalities, it's where the shading overlaps, and you'll kind of see how it all comes together in a second. But here's an example. It's kind of messy, but here I graphed a line, I shaded underneath, and then I graphed this line, I shaded underneath, and where that shading overlaps is actually the solutions. So that's where we're headed with this. Remember, with the less than or equal to or greater than and equal to, we're using a solid line. And then, actually I'm going to zoom in more because I know it's hard to see. With the less than or greater than, it is a dotted line, so we have to remember to use that. And also, to graph these, we will have to rearrange it into like slope-intercept format so we can easily just put it on the graph. Also, if we divide by a negative, we do have to change the sign in the other direction, so we have to remember that as well. So for number 7, I do have to rearrange both of these because they aren't in a format I can graph easily. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Y is less than or equal to -4x plus 1. And then here, can kind of switching colors. Subtract x from both sides. I get 2y is less than or equal to negative x minus 1. And then from here, divide everything by 2. Y is less than or equal to negative 1/2 x minus 1/2. And then I'm going to graph just one at a time. It is less than or equal to and less than or equal to, so I can use a solid line. I don't have to remember to do a dotted line. And I'm just going to graph. So y-intercept is at 1, and then slope negative 4. Which negative 4 over 1 is the same as positive 4 over negative 1, so I can also graph in the other direction. And there's my line. And then I need to shade it. It says y is less than the line, so I'm shading underneath. Something that you can also do too, if you aren't using colors, you can just use patterns. So you could use a striped pattern for this. And then for the next line, it's kind of weird because the y-intercept is at negative 1/2, so that's in between 0 and negative 1. And then the slope is negative 1, 2, so down 1 over 2. Or up 1 over 2. And then graph this line. Okay, and then once we have this line graphed, y is less than or equal to, so we can shade underneath this line. And again, if you aren't using colors, you could just use a pattern. Here I can use like a squiggly line for this one. And then the actual area where the solutions are where it overlaps. So you could kind of go crazy at this point and just like shade. The part that overlaps is this whole area. This, it doesn't overlap. This doesn't overlap. It's like right here. So I'm just going to try to shade in kind of dark. So these are all your solutions. No, you don't. So like when you had this on Khan Academy, it just gave you a point and it asked if that point was in the solution area. Like there's different ways you could ask about it, but it's not any one specific number.
So is that's it? That question's done, or is it?
That question is done. And I went a little crazy with the coloring, but that is the area where it overlaps.
So is there like
How might this be asked? There's no specific one number. It's anything that falls in there. Any coordinates that fall in that area are solutions. Yes.
What was the solution again?
So any coordinate that falls in that area. So there's,
So we don't write them?
you don't write anything. In terms of the homework, you'll see these two types of equations, and then it'll give you 4 options for graphs, and then you choose the graph. Okay, and then number 8 is the same thing. For 8, we do have to remember that we're going to have to use a dotted line, and then also we do divide by a negative, so we have to make sure to change the sign for one of them. So when I rearrange the equations, I have to keep that in mind. So rearranging this, subtract 5x from both sides. And then to get y by itself, I do need to divide by -1 or multiply by -1, whatever you prefer. And when I divide by the -1, I do need to change the sign in the other direction, so we get 5x minus 3. So I'm going to graph this one. And then the other one over here, subtract 2x from both sides. y is greater than negative 2x plus 8, and then I'll graph this. Okay, so now that I have these, y-intercept is at negative 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the slope is 5, so up 5 over 5. Oh, yeah, over 1. Thank you. Can also be down 5. And then remember, dotted line. And y is greater than that line, so it's going to be all the values on top. And the next one, y-intercept is 8. And then the slope's negative 2, down 1 over 2. Did I say that backwards again? Down 2 over 1. I don't know. Okay, dotted line again. And then y is greater than all those values, so I'm going to use my squiggly line over here. And then where it overlaps is your solution, so it's like this little pocket right here. There we go. So homework for tonight, I only assigned you 5 questions because I noticed that a lot of you still need to work on your weekly Khan Academy. So it's only 5 questions. You aren't actually graphing on the computer. You're just identifying the graph from multiple choice. One thing that you do need to remember to do is to rearrange your equations so that way you can identify the graph. So most of the equations will be in a format that you'll have to rearrange to be able to see like the slope, intercept, and the slope. So just keep that in mind. You'll use a computer to get your homework started in class and probably finished. Once you finish your homework, jump on Khan Academy and make sure that you're working on that for the week because tomorrow's Friday already. So tomorrow the plan is to just practice this. On the back of this page, there are a bunch of graphs where we're going to practice. I realize some of you didn't print it out. Remember to print it out tonight. So that way tomorrow is a lot easier where you have it already laid out for you and you just practice. So, okay, go ahead and get up, get a computer.